Hello and good evening, dear guests, dear participants, dear helpers, dear scientists, dear CEOs from different companies connected to glider developing. Most of us are really like gliders, some of us more than her wives. But no, I don't look at you, Robert. Sorry. We are living in a difficult time, actually. The difficult time gives us some rules, and we also have to follow the rules this evening. Therefore, we built a podium, a panel for this night, which tries to have a difference of 1.5 meters between the participants of the discussion. And I also have a little bit paper here, some sheets of paper, which I have to hand over to the auditorium. I even brought a pencil with me, knowing that this is actually not contaminated, but maybe later on, but we have to have a chance to follow up if somebody difficult or critical appears in the future of our contest, and we want to avoid any problems about this. I'm the competition director here, and therefore I have to ask you for this favor. Please sign in. And then I can't do anything more than to give the microphone to Max. Max, I joined the group of Max in Kamenz 2 weeks ago, so we have the same contamination. I can hand over the microphone.
Thank you, Uwe. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm hello and welcome to our panel discussion this evening about the future of electrical gliding. Let me first introduce to you the participants. We got, next to me on my left, Matthew Scudder from Australia, the overall actual leader and the mastermind behind SkySight, the weather forecast system. Next to him, Thilo Holikhaus, the most of you might know him. He's the CEO of Champert and also participant at this competition. Next to him, Moritz Althaus. He's a programmer and part of the team for the gliding platform E2GLIDE, which will start next year, and later on he will tell us some words about E2GLIDE. Next to him we got Robert Schröder. He jumped in for Holger Back, and he's a competition pilot, participant of the competition here. So we got 3 experienced pilots here, which give us a good opportunity to discuss the central competition in electrical flying. Next to him we got Lukas Nidasic from Slovenia, the CEO of LZ, design and inventor of the FES motor system. He's also a participant here at the competition. Next to him, we got Ulrich Kremer, CEO from Alexander Schleicher. So in general, we got 2 of the major gliding factories on our panel. And last but not least, we got Philipp Scheffel, CEO from APUS and competition director of the Green Speed Cup, which is in general for the public outside of the airfield, maybe as same as interesting as our competition here. Some organizing things. If you got any questions, feel free to ask them, but please use the commentary function of the live stream in YouTube, because Markus, our sports director, will check which kind of question is posted, and after that I get a short WhatsApp, so don't be worried or ask me what I do when I check my smartphone. I'm not bored. Then I get the questions, and then we can discuss the questions on the podium. Okay, so let us start with the first major thing of the evening. We want to discuss the central electrical competition flying. This kind of competition flying is actually the kind we do here in the last days, and we already had 4 flying days. The best one was today with a distance about 300 kilometers. The participants are allowed to use 2 kilowatt hours of electrical energy. Every watt hour over that will be or gets a malus, so they get a time malus. maybe we can see it on the screen, to realize different gliders on this competition. The organizing team had some long evenings and they decided to use a distance index, which gives us opportunity to fly with 13.5 meter class gliders and also with open class gliders. So the one with the smallest index is the Silent 2, and the best one on the paper is the Antares 20. The guys in the live stream might now see how we use or how we design this distance index. Here we can't see it now, but for you all, I think it's not a problem because you know how the task length is designed. So first question to the podium. What do you think about this distance criterion we use to make the gliders almost the same? Robert, maybe you first.
I think the scoring works quite well in this competition. The distance index, I think it's much better than the index system we used before. And for me, it's actually a new experience with the distance index, and I think that will be the future.
For the audience, Robert flies with an LS8, so he is quite in the middle of the gliders which are flying here. Luca, you fly the Ventus 3 with 18 meters. Do you also think the distance handicap is fair?
My opinion is that for sure is a step forward compared to way how the competition was handicapped last year in Pavulo, where basically the audience were not able to see who was really the finish, who really finished first. So here, the guy who is first, second, like in proper Grand Prix. So far it works pretty good. The main thing is maybe this handicap list from Deutsche Aero Club, which is based on the gliders where they are loaded with the maximum wing loading. And here we are limited to not really maximum wing loading. So it's so the differences are actually not that big like on the proper handicapped competition where you are allowed to fly with maximum wing loading of the glider. So
I know that we got one person on the podium which wants to discuss the wing loading point. So Matthew, maybe you can give us a short introduction to your point of you referring to the wing load maximum.
Yeah, so I feel similarly to Luca, and I think the biggest discrepancy is between 15-meter and standard class gliders, in that the main performance advantage 15-meter gliders have over standard class gliders is the flaps enable them to fly thermals at a higher wing loading than the standard class gliders do. And when we set a uniform wing loading limit, I think it makes it very hard for the Ventus 2s to get away from the Discus 2s and the Dianas to get away from the LS8s. So, I would suggest that for a future competition, instead if we used an absolute weight, perhaps let's say the max takeoff weight of the gliders minus 100 kilos or minus 75 kilos or something like that, then that fits much better with a handicap system that is designed based on the glider's maximum abilities rather than an equivalent wing loading across all the gliders.
Thilo, as a participant and also glider manufacturer, do you share the opinion of Matthew or do you have another point?
Well, I've got a little bit of a different point. We have here a competition with a strategy in the future, and we must see if this concept will be something also introduced in a larger scale. And I think the idea of having an equalized wing loading is not just a big safety factor, but it also gives the possibility for a big variety of gliders to take part. And it's also a question of fairness, because, well, I agree that with flapped gliders or not flapped gliders, you have a difference. But here, in combination with this distance scoring, at least this argument of leaching is completely gone. We experienced here that because of this distance scoring, we always have, whenever we reach a turn point, the leaching completely flips over. So the one who was in front is suddenly in the rear and backwards. And I think this combination actually works pretty good.
You mentioned the point of fairness. I think this is one of the major points. The distance handicap had the idea to make all competition tasks fair for everybody. It gave us the opportunity to see the winner actually on the point of the finish line. What do you think at all or to all about weight handicaps? Because on this competition we got a wide spread of takeoff weights. The Silent 2 only has 315 kilograms, and the Antares something about 600 kilograms. Okay. So what do you think is the distance handicap the right way to make this big spread fair for everybody? Matthew.
Well, again, talking about weights, I think that the amount of power gliders should be allowed to use should be scaled in reference to the weight of the aircraft and the performance of the aircraft. So, for example, the Antares should, because it's roughly twice as heavy as the Silent, be able to take twice as much electricity in flight, but it also has to consider the increased performance of the Antares. So its glide ratio is 50% higher than the Silent or something. So perhaps that works out to plus 30%. I think the fair way to work it out would be how much energy is required for each glider to cover 50 kilometers, and then to give each glider a multiple of that. So every glider with their weight, with their glider, to cover 50 or 100 or whatever we decide on kilometers worth of energy.
I think that's an interesting point, Robert. You look like you want to say.
I agree. I think if we change from the same kilogram per square meters to maximum weight, which is based on the MTOF, will not make a big difference. I think in an E2GLIDE competition like this, the weight is more than about using the energy. And there is the point where I agree to Matthew. Just give everybody 2 kilowatt is not fair, because the weight really takes a lot of energy. So I think it's not the weight discussion is not about the distance. It's more or less about the electric energy you use.
So for the future, I would prefer some combination. Is it right? Some combination of the distance handicap and also some kind of weight handicap, which is together one handicap. Sure. I don't know. So this might be this one a solution.
I would suggest both.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure. I mean, I think we only had a couple of days, and it's although the days were completely different. I mean, today we had a very strong day, and we could see that, I mean, the extremely varying gliders were extremely close together. I mean, they finished within, I don't know, 2 minutes or so after a flight of more than 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So it didn't work too bad. Also on the very weekdays, we see that also the extreme different gliders finished fairly. And the other thing is, I think we shouldn't make it too complicated from the rules. And I think it's a bit too early to judge already today. So I think the system we had, I mean, I have maybe the advantage of having also the experience from flying in high mountains in Pavullo at the first E2GLIDE, and there the wing loading equivalence was extremely important because it was a very dangerous area to fly. And when everybody had the same wing loading, especially being close to the mountains, it was very good to know that every glider is more or less behaving similar. And being light, of course, 45 kilogram per square meter is fairly light. is also a big safety factor, also for taking off. For example, when we had here this extreme wet airfield, it was a good way to be light enough. And today we could see with this wing loading and this extreme fast flight we had today, we still had a lot of fun.
Für unsere deutschen Zuschauer würde ich mal ganz kurz die letzten Minuten ein wenig zusammenfassen, denn ich denke auch, wir haben einige lokale Segelflieger, die hier zuschauen und die auch interessiert, was wir hier besprechen. Wir sind so an dem Punkt angekommen, dass das Distance Handicap, was hier genutzt wird, durchaus als praktisch betrachtet wird und auch als fair, aber trotzdem das Gewicht der Segelflieger irgendwie mit einbezogen werden muss, denn die Silent 2 und auch die Antares sind doch sehr weit auseinander. Also die beiden Flieger trennen fast 300 Kilogramm. Und jeder, der in Physik irgendwo ein bisschen aufgepasst hat, weiß, dass die Energie halt leider nicht einfach so da ist, sondern die muss man sich dann auch irgendwo umwandeln. Und an dem Punkt sind wir jetzt gelangt und ich würde dann auch immer wieder mal so einen deutschen kleinen Einschub bringen, dass sie alle mitgenommen sind. Philipp, you are the director of the Green Speed Cup. It's a cup which is not that far away from the E2GLIDE competition. Maybe you can give us some view inside your competition idea, and maybe we can learn from your idea, which was born in 2011, some main things for the E2GLIDE future.
Yeah, it is slightly different. It is also, of course, the combination of gliding and the engine, but it is. We try to avoid, for example, this discussion to make a formula to equalize all the gliders, and our competition is more a technology competition. So we try to find out also which aircraft is the best for such a kind of flying combination of both. And the pilot factor, actually we wanted to exclude the pilot factor and equalize the pilots, but of course this is not possible. But it's not less fun. We use the engine more than in this competition. So, for example, an equalization of the mass would be reverse. So a higher mass is a problem when you use the engine, and an advantage when you are in gliding mode. And we are more in the engine mode. So heavier aircrafts get the penalty by the mass already. So they get advantage by the formula. But it is a little bit more far away from the gliding because we don't do thermaling, we don't do circles. It's only dolphin flying, yeah. And actually, we wanted to use also electric gliders always in this competition. But when we started that competition in 2011, there were almost none. And we always tried a lot to find competitors. Luca was there, and some others here. They came, but we never reached more than 3 to 4 electric gliders, and that's why we had to switch to conventional combustion engines. We don't want that, and maybe in the future, when there are more gliders and a longer range, so that we can really use it also for motor flying, the electric gliders, then it makes more sense, our competition. Yeah.
Okay, so it's not in comparison to the E2GLIDE the same, it's some kind of different, but you also had the problem of major difference between the aircrafts, don't you?
Yes, but actually our decision was to make classes then. When the difference is too big, then make classes. And I think this will come up here too later on. When there are enough gliders, you will not let a silent fly against Antares in the future when there are enough Antares and enough silent for the competition. Or you say, okay, I want to find out which one is better for such kind of flying. This is a standard problem in gliding. Open class gliders and club class gliders cannot fly together in the competition with the best index system. It doesn't work. So I think you have, on some point, you have to be satisfied that it works for the moment to combine the high variation of gliders because we don't have so many, but in the future I'm convinced there will be many more. Yeah, and then we are able to make classes.
Okay, we will see in the future. At the moment, we got two different kinds of motor systems. We got the front electric sustainer system from LZ Design, from Luca, and we still got gliders with a retractable engine in the back, mainly from Schleicher. So maybe Ulrich, you can tell us something about your ideas, why you use the retractable engine and don't jump to the front electric sustainer.
I think it depends on which glider types you have mainly in production. We see the problem that when you develop a high performance, let's say 18-meter glider for competition, where we spend a lot of time, money in aerodynamics, yeah, and it's hard for the designers then to put in a propeller on the nose to destroy the laminar flow of the fuselage. Yeah. I think you will also see that, probably Tilo knows better how many of these high-performance gliders has a FES system and how many of these customers decide more for retractable engines or the standard turbo sustainer engine.
It's about 50-50.
Yeah, okay. So it will change from especially such a new competition format will surely bring a change in what the pilots think, how to use it. Yeah? And for us was all the thing to see, does it make sense then to make the same as other manufacturers to install the FES? Or should we do something different? You know, what we have done now and said, okay, the FES system is mostly a sustainer, at least for the gliders we have in production with that weight, no ultralight gliders. And so we said, okay, then it's better to make something different, to develop a self-launcher. And for the self-launcher, the retractable engine with a larger propeller, it's a better choice. Yeah? And had the advantage that you have no additional drag in front. Yeah? But for some kinds in flight, yeah, it's for sure the FES system is attractive. Yeah? For other things, when you climb and glide, I think the better version is a retractable engine. Yeah? But the future we'll see, and at the end, the customer will decide what they want to have.
I think this is a really exciting point because we got the comparison of the different manufacturers. I know that the Silent 2, for example, is also able to do some self-launching, and Florian, the participant who flies this glider, doesn't do it because of the energy he needs for the self-launching process, so he doesn't have much left after that. Do you know how much you might have left for the new AS34 after self-launching? Just roundabout?
Well, not at the moment, yeah. So we need to get more experience. Just yesterday we had the maiden flight of the 34 ME, and we need to test more things and measure it, yeah. But for sure, for the self-launch, you need some power, yeah. So our engine runs in the self-launch with more than 35 kilowatts, so you need a lot of power, but on the other hand, the climb rate is good, yeah. And but the design is a bit different on the self-launcher as for a sustainer, yeah? So we have much more or more battery capacity that you can climb at the end up to 3,000 meters.
Okay, then congratulations for the maiden flight. Luca, why do you decide to build such a motor system for gliders? Where do you got the idea?
So I was building model aircrafts from my childhood, and when I was about 12, 13, I made some model radio control, and eventually I put a Cox engine on the pylon and made a test flight and barely flew level. So, and I was disappointed, so then I put this little Cox engine in front And I couldn't believe the difference in performance because then the glider was climbing nearly 45 degrees. So, and later, when I was 15, I started gliding, and from my when I started gliding and start flying competitions, I did not want to have any engine. So for me, for competition, was better to have pure glider because engine is always some additional weight, and with available engine systems, you had to have some safety margin in altitude to start, and experience showed that quite often you can still get the thermal on 200 meters or even lower. And as a competition pilot, I simply couldn't see that having an engine would be an advantage. But at that time, my girlfriend, she was crying for me. After 10 years, we married and first daughter. And then she said, I don't want to pick you up anymore on the field. So figure out something. So, so I had to figure out something which would, by my opinion, still be possible to quickly start on low altitude, basically, and not to have some serious penalty on the competition flight. So, and from efficiency point of view, mainly from power flight, this simple test when I was 13 showed me that putting the engine in front is simply so much more efficient and with very small amount of energy. For instance, in these phase batteries, we have like the same energy like in half liter of gasoline. So this was then more natural choice, but we had to develop special electric motor, and we had to overcome many obstacles to make it possible at the end. So,
okay, you've done always a great job, I think. Moritz, from the point of view of a programmer, the last days, today you joined the live stream, I made it on Sunday. We had the wish to get live data from the engine use. Do you think, from the point of an IT guy, that there's a chance for this solution?
I mean, it's definitely possible. It sort of depends on the kind of hardware you have in the aircraft. So I think this would actually be a question to Luca, probably, if you're able to get any information about battery usage out of the glider.
For sure, we can get this data. For instance, now our FCU instrument is already connected with the flight computer, where you can see counting the watt hours you are using. So in this flight computer is already integrated FLARM. It's just a question if the FLARM guys will accept to send also these sentences by their protocol. So.
We have to give this question to Ulrich too, I think, because in the future we also want all the Schleicher gliders in the E2GLIDE too. So do you see any chance for your motor to get the signals to the ground live?
I think the data we have are more or less the same. It's only the question to get the correct, call it the bridge, from the motor system to the FLARM or what else. Yeah. So at the moment it's not, we measure the power and the time, and then you can calculate it in the instrument. I think it's more or less the same as in the FES. Shouldn't be a problem.
So this might be a project for us as a community maybe, so not every manufacturer for itself. Maybe we can find a solution together with the FLARM guys. We have to talk to them. I'm quite optimistic for that. We got the first question from the YouTube stream, and it's not the worst in this point. Some guy asked us, you all get malus for using the energy or the motor too much, but why don't any pilot get bonus for using the energy or the motor less? What are your thoughts about this question?
Well, I think that's the idea of this contest. I mean, we have a special amount of energy, and the idea is to use this energy in the best possible way to make ourselves faster. And if we get a bonus on using less energy, it would be just another gliding competition, more or less. This question is definitely asked from somebody who's used to fly gliders. And when I started flying this FES, I also said, well, this is stupid what we are doing. We are using an engine. We are glider pilots. That we shouldn't do this. And it really took us quite a while to understand the additional possibilities we have with this engine. And I think it's great fun to explore using the engine, how to make ourselves faster. And also the way of flying completely changed. I mean, we can fly at conditions where you normally wouldn't be able to set a competition like we did on the first 2 days. And this is only possible because we have the possibility of using this engine. So it's a different concept, and I think I'm very optimistic that this gives a new impulse for our sport.
So it's some kind of changing in philosophy maybe here, because the engines with a normal retractable engine were built to come home. It's maybe not the general idea anymore. Matthew, you got a almost brand new Diana 2 with the FES. So maybe what kind of opinion do you have?
Well, just in relation to the question, I think we don't get a bonus if we finish high or if we start low, so I don't see it as any different to that. So.
Okay, yeah, it's the same point, sure. Okay, what made you to decide to buy a Diana 2 with a FES engine and not without an engine?
Well, I had started to expand my interests again out of competition flying, so I wanted to do some more exploratory flying, maybe fly some places where gliders hadn't been before, or where it's perhaps uncomfortable to fly with a system that relies on retraction and extension. I wanted a glider that I would be able to self-launch with, maybe not full of water, but if there's no tow pilot available, it's good to have another option available. And I wanted something I could still fly in competitions as well, either with or without the FES.
Yeah. So that's also the point Thilo said. It's not just an engine to come home. It's an engine to get a new point to the gliding view, I think. For the competition here, we are using some kind of scoring like in the Tour de France. So everybody gets his time penalty and it remains in the scoring. We had the problem that it wasn't maybe easy in the representation every evening. So do you have some ideas how we can manage this problem to make the scoring for the people out of the airfield a bit more representative? Or it's maybe the question is perfect to you, because we always ask why there isn't any easy software for this Grand Prix format with some time malus.
I mean, I think the software is still evolving, so it's going to take some time to sort of adopt. But I think the scoring, considering minutes, is quite interesting because you really see how far behind one pilot is, and you can sort of judge whether one pilot can catch up again or whether he can't. So I think if it's done right, and it will probably take some more time, but it is a very interesting concept.
So do you think the E2GLIDE group would be able to manage such kind of software for the next E2GLIDE in the next year, maybe?
Well, at the moment, we're just doing scoring system for decentralized flights, but I think in the future it will definitely be a very interesting topic for us.
Okay, so we changed the topic directly in your answer to the decentralized competition flying. It's quite common in Germany and in Europe, and we use the online contest to compare with other glider pilots. And in Germany, there's the competition format, the Deutsche Meisterschaft im Streckensegelflug, DMST. And on next year, this competition format will launch on the E2GLIDE. So Moritz, maybe you can introduce us a little bit to E2GLIDE. And in the back, we see one of the major new things referring to the E2GLIDE.
Yeah, I mean, we've just these days we've implemented a couple of FES features. So this is a flight from Johannes today, and you can see on the left-hand side that there is his battery usage. So he started with 100%, and he's probably down to 58 in the end. And I think, especially concerning FES usage, there's a lot of interesting features which you can implement. You can show power consumption, total power consumption, and quite a few more interesting things.
For me, it's also the first view on this software. I never saw it before. I'm quite impressed.
Yeah, this is another screenshot. So this is actually Matthew. It's your flight from today. We just uploaded it. Sorry. And yeah, I think very interesting concept here is because people really seem to enjoy this sort of flying with the FES usage. And I think it will be very interesting if we can actually sort of move this kind of scoring to a decentralized way. And I think I'm very looking forward to get some input here. And I think there's a lot of possibilities. And we've just done some prototyping here, so you can see the electric scoring from today from Matthew. And basically we said, well, it's a speed score. So we tried to find the fastest 2.5 hours, but we've limited to 2 kilowatt hours. So you would not be allowed to use more than those 2 kilowatt hours. And you can see we couldn't find a window which is 2.5 hours because Matthew has been using the FES quite a lot. So his score is actually down to 2 hours and 50 minutes or something. But he's still been quite fast. So I think it's just a prototype or example. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to have some input here.
Yeah, this scoring system seems to be quite similar to the German Bundesliga, where we also use the 2.5 hours of fastest flying. It's not the same because the Bundesliga and also the DMST have in the mind to make long flights with long distances, which is not the same idea with the FES. So, Robert, you are a Bundesliga pilot from Bad Wörishofen, and what do you think about this idea with the FES usage?
Well, the advantage of the Bundesliga is that it's more or less understandable for people who are not connected with flying or with gliding. And that makes it much easier to be in the public, to show what you do. Remember, when I started with glider flying, we had in Germany 65,000 glider pilots, and now we are down to 27. And yeah, we have to stop it. And therefore, we have to go to the public. We have to write articles in the newspaper, and it should be understandable what we are doing there. And I see the point that with using the electric energy, it makes it much more complicated. And I don't see the point that we can use it for the publicity.
So it's not that good for public like the competition central. I think we can use this competition here perfect for the public showing of gliding. I see your point. What kind of ideas do you guys have about decentral gliding with the FES and all the benefits we get from the FES? Maybe we start with Ulrich and then just go through the podium.
I think it's, in my opinion, a little bit difficult to answer because there are some pilots have different ideas what they want to do. Yeah? Here we are talking always about competition, and when I see a lot of our customers, yeah, many of these are non-competition pilots and also not decentral. They don't fly decentral competitions. Yeah, they only really fly for fun. Yeah, and want to be independent from clubs or what else. Yeah, and so that's the reason why, in my opinion, the self-launcher are more and more popular. Yeah? But for sure, the sustainer for here, it's or the FES system, it's a good thing to bring into competition. Yeah? It's difficult to answer, in my opinion, what we should do to make gliding more popular again. Yeah?
But do you think that the electrical motor system for gliding is a chance to get the gliding more popular?
I think so. In the past, the people, so always in the motorized gliders, complicated system, especially in the handling. Yeah, when you see the older system, it's true. Yeah, and the idea we had now with 34 is to make a combination of easy to handle glider and that to combine with easy to handle engine system. Yeah. And the feedback we have at the moment or the past months seems that we are not wrong. Yeah.
Okay, so your point is not to get on a competition level. We need also some level for the fun flyers. And maybe we can also get an online system to see how the fun flyers use the engines, because often the electrical engine, especially the FES, is used to do flights they were never possible before. Thilo, you are the perfect example from the Schwäbische Alb.
Yes, I think this electrical flying is a season prolonger for sure, because then you can even in fall or winter, just by the use of a very little amount of energy, you can stretch the flights enormously. For example, on the Schwäbische Alb, if you go from ridge to ridge, ridge soaring on the Schwäbische Alb is difficult. Especially if you're below ridgeline, but with the FES you can just switch on the engine a little bit to stay above the ridgeline, and then you can continue to fly, or if there's a big gap you can just jump over, and so the possibilities you have with using only tiny little bit of energy is. I made a flight last winter where I just used 20% of my battery and stretched my flight to more than 200 kilometers in, I don't know, December, where everybody else just flew between Teck and Neuffen, which is only 5 kilometers. So the possibility also in coming back to the first question, what you can do also in the decentralized flight with the use of the engine is enormous. And there are so often you limit yourself just because you're afraid to use the engine on the normal scoring. So if you fly, if you're just in front of a good-looking mountain on the other side of a valley, but you're not sure if you can really reach it, you will turn around and you will not try it. And it's a shame, because very often it is possible to fly to there or to bridge some, I mean, here, for example, bridging from the Erzgebirge to the Riesengebirge. And normally, there's a high percentage it will work, but there's also a small percentage it will not work. If it does not work, I mean, you ruined your decentralized flight, and therefore you don't do it often. And by having the chance of using the engine also in the decentralized flights, I think would be a lot of exploring. It's a really scientific way of flying, and we can learn much more, especially if I have this online platform where I can see what the other has done. And if you can see, it was possible, great, let's try the next time myself. There is a chance, and if it does not work, well, use a little bit the engine, and you open up your mind. And I think this should be possible also in decentralized flying. If we include it in the normal flying, or if we make a separate class, I mean, this will be the future will show what is the right way.
Robert, are you an explorer too?
I try, but your question was about the FES. For me, the most important point concerning the FES is safety, because it's the only sustainer system I know where it's easier to start the system than to shut it down. So many accidents and incidents are connected with using the turbos or the self-launcher engines in low altitudes. And for me, that's the biggest point, the most important point, that you can start the system so easy.
Yeah, that's a point next to all our discussions about competitions, which is quite heavy, I think. Ulrich, maybe before we follow the discussion to the decentralized competition flying, do you think your retractable engine is as fast startable than the FES, or maybe you can give us some experience from the ASG 32?
Yeah, it's not as fast as the FES. It's impossible. Yeah, but the handling, it's similar easy. Yeah, yeah. So with the handling, the pilot can nearly make nothing wrong. Yeah, and for sure it takes about 10 seconds longer to take the pylon up. Yeah, but then you have immediately power. Yeah, you have no problem. No starting problems as in the past, probably with combustion engines and so. On the handling, it's much easier. And what Robert says, I agree that some accidents happens in the past with more older designs. And I think we can go a good step forward to make this or the retractable systems much safer and easier to handle with the electrical systems.
Thilo, you want to jump in?
Yeah, there's one additional thing I want to say. I mean, normally a retractable engine was used to avoid outlandings. The system of the E2GLIDE or using the electrical engine is a different one. You don't fly down to the very last meter and avoid an outlanding. You switch on the engine before you get in trouble. So, for example, when we flew, Markus and I, last year in Pavullo, where there were basically only 3 outlanding possibilities in the whole competition area, we always, whenever our computer says, oh, it's now going from green to yellow, we are getting close to not reaching the outlanding field anymore, even being 1,000 meters high, we immediately switched the engine on. And we didn't wait until we are down to 200 meters. So basically, if you use a certain amount of energy, you don't have to wait to be down into a dangerous area. You switch on the engine much earlier before you get in trouble. That's a different mindset you have, having a different concept, but of course it increases the safety tremendously.
Liebe Zuschauer, jetzt sind wir, glaube ich, gerade an einem sehr wichtigen Punkt angekommen. Denn wir haben uns gerade ein bisschen wegbewegt von der reinen Wettbewerbsdiskussion hin zu einem sehr wichtigen Punkt, nämlich dass die ganze Elektrofliegerei schlussendlich einen riesengroßen Zuwachs an Sicherheit mit sich bringt. Wir haben dabei gerade eben mal den FES-Antrieb mit dem Klappantrieb von Schleicher ein bisschen verglichen und haben einfach festgestellt, dass die Grundeinstellung zur Fliegerei sich insofern dann ändert, dass man eben nicht mehr bis in den Queranflug oder Endanflug auf seinen Acker fliegt und dann vielleicht über den Motor nachdenkt, sondern schon deutlich eher und seinen Flug dann da halt entspannt weitertreiben kann, ohne dort in irgendwelche Stresssituationen zu kommen. Wir haben ebenso genauso festgestellt, dass gerade mit dem FES, mal abgesehen von den Wettbewerbsmöglichkeiten, vor allem dezentral Möglichkeiten im Bereich der Entdeckungen mal wieder entstehen. Die Fliegerei war ja immer irgendwie so ein bisschen so ein Antreiber für Entdeckung der Welt. Und mit dem FES oder den Elektroantrieben kommt es so ein Stück weit auch wieder zurück, hat man das Gefühl. Ein schönes Beispiel hat Thilo gebracht, dass man einfach im Dezember 200 Kilometer Hangflug an der Schwäbischen Alb betreiben kann. Während die Kameraden, die halt kein FES hatten, im 5 Kilometer Radius hin und her gesprungen sind. Die Städte kann ich nicht wiederholen, das muss er mir nachsehen. Sodass dort wirklich ein großer Zuwachs an Attraktivität für alle da ist. Und wir haben von Moritz gerade vorgestellt bekommen, das E2GLIDE-System, auf dem ab dem nächsten Jahr die DMST in Deutschland basiert sein wird. Und er hat uns auch gezeigt, dass es schon jetzt FES-Lösungen online für dezentrale Vergleichbarkeit dort gibt. Dazu wird ein 2,5-Stunden-Fenster ausgesucht, wo der Pilot maximal 2 Kilowattstunden an Energie schlussendlich nutzen darf. Und der Algorithmus sucht es quasi fortlaufend durch den Flug durch, dass er wirklich das Schnellste findet. Also da ist nichts mit manueller Wettbewerbszeitbestimmung, wie es ja jetzt durchaus noch im OLC auch gängige Praxis ist. Also da sind wir irgendwie schon einen Schritt weiter. So at the point of the decentral competition flying, Moritz wanted to say anything before, so let's come back to the decentralized gliding. Maybe we can do 2 parts of discussion. First, that we use an online platform for the exploring flights, not for comparison in a competition sense, just to see what did the other pilot done, where was he flying to, and just to see what crazy kind of flights maybe have done. And the other part, the decentralized competition. Moritz, you gave me a sign some minutes before.
I just want to reply to Robert. And I think what he said is quite right, because he said we can't really bring electric scoring into any kind of league flying or something like that, because it would make it more complicated, and I think it's true. Because I think it's very hard to compare FAS flights to non-FAS flights, because you can't really quantify how much of an advantage the FAS provides you, because it might be just a couple of hundreds meters, but it might actually save you from an outlanding, and you can do another 400 kilometers afterwards. So that's very difficult. But I think where it's very interesting, the concept is exactly how Thilo told us, the concept of exploration. Because if you do some interesting flights, where maybe the weather is not as good, or maybe ridge flying or wave flying in the winter, it's very nice to say, well, he did 250 kilometers and he only used 2 kilowatt hours of energy, instead of saying, well, he only did 20 kilometers because afterwards he turned on the electrical system. So I think this is really where it shines, but it's not really easy to do some sort of ranking.
Luca?
So my opinion is that it's all about having fun. So not that like I often see some pilots, they start in the morning, and after struggling in weak conditions for the first hour, eventually they are a little bit short to get to good conditions, so they start the engine and they simply turn back and they land, and that's it. But it would need just a little bit to have fun till the evening. So it's all about fun. So
that would be a perfect ending for such a discussion. But I think in Marcus' opinion, we are quite early. So let's have some more point of views. So for the decentralized gliding, we collected some ideas before from other pilots and from the community. And there was the idea to make some kind of scoring system. We want to see who flies the most kilometers a day with some kind of energy contingent the pilot gets. So maybe the Diana 2, as an example, gets for a day 2 kilowatt hours of energy, which the Diana 2 can use without any malus. The Antares 3 kilowatt hours maybe, and then the guys just to fly as much kilometer as possible. What do you think about this idea? This might be comparable. Matthew?
I think what we're doing here is somewhere between an entirely new sport we've invented, or a sideshow to the soaring season, something we can do on the edge of the soaring season. And where we end up landing with this is hard to say at the moment, but my feeling is that most glider pilots are going to prefer, through the majority of the soaring season, to fly their gliders as pure as possible. When it comes to the edge of the season, then maybe it's going to really come alive. And I can see that it would be interesting to have some kind of decentralized scoring system that ran perhaps outside the normal soaring season, where we could see what people are getting up to and have some kind of scoring like that.
In the background, there is the commenters of the live stream, and I see a question from Charlotte von Stern. She asked if it isn't possible to get a next kind of European Bundesliga, which would be held in the winter during September and March with the electric gliders. Robert, what do you think?
I have to think about.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Well, I think the problem there would be that we don't have so many gliders equipped with FES and so many clubs. But I think what Matthew said about the season is right, because nobody's going to give up a 1,000 kilometer flight on a pure glider to have a 1,020 kilometers flight with a FES engine run in between. So I don't really see people using the FES in flight on really good days, just to be a bit faster.
Yeah, but I think on good days, it is the big distance which counts. But I think on the not so good days, this is when I prefer to look into the OLC to see what was possible on this day. And therefore, I mean, Charlotte's idea, I think, is brilliant. I would love to see this. And the argument that there are not enough gliders, I mean, this is not completely true. In the meantime, Luca, how many systems have you built already?
Around 250.
I think this is quite a big number, and it's increasing. I mean, the FES, and I'm sure, Uli, you will have a lot of orders for the electrical engines as well. I think we don't have to see from today on, but if you look 5 years ahead, I think there will be many of these gliders available, and if you use this, for example, in clubs, other people, different people can use it. Many of these electrical gliders actually are sold in clubs because it is so simple. For the clubs, it's just ideal. For even people with low experience, they are able to use it, and then they could use, the club members could use this glider for flying in the winter time. It would be very exciting, especially on the tricky days, to see what actually was possible.
Thilo, during the dinner you told me FES flying is something like air hiking. Maybe you can tell the audience what your ideas are behind this. You told a lot of it, but maybe you can just summarize it for everybody.
Well, this is just a very old, an 80-year-old dream of one of the most famous glider pilots, Wolf Wirth, founder also of our company. He called it Luftwandern, and his idea was already in the 30s or in the 40s to use the engine a tiny little bit to go from one place to the other, and I think this is an excellent idea, and I think he would be extremely happy, having a big smile on the face to see what we can do nowadays with our technique we have.
I think so too. Now I would like to discuss another point with you. The public relations from gliding increased by the electric comparison or electric competitions. The last days we had the live stream here, and Mark and some mixture of guys made it quite interesting, I think. And for me, yesterday, for example, it was perfect in the afternoon. I came home after work, 12:30, and were able to do something sensible in the afternoon with a cup of coffee. So what do you think? Is it easier for us to use such kind of competition to get to the public or not? Easy question, maybe. I don't know.
I think the only way it's expanding the reach to the public is that we have a longer soaring season, that there's a wider time window through the year that the public can see gliding going on. I'm not sure that what we're doing here is anything more or less exciting to the public than what we normally do.
I disagree, because I talked to many of the spectators who actually have been here in the airfield, and I must say the club here made good PR work, and there was obviously a lot of information spread out in the newspapers, and people actually came to here and they wanted to see what is going on here. There's a new idea, a new concept, let's see what it is. And also the green idea of flying without pollution. Electrical engine, I mean, this is extreme common system now, especially in the automotive, but we can hook on to this, and so the environmental idea and this positive PR behind this, I mean, we make almost no noise, no pollution, and people, of course, the pedestrians, I mean, the non-flying pilot people, they have no clue what we are doing, basically, but they have some imagination that we have a tiny little engine and that we can fly several hundred kilometers. This must be something great. And this was the opinion I got from the spectators who came to here and walked through our gliders and just wanted to be more informed.
Often gliding is also really known for inventions for the bigger flying aircraft. So is there any chance for us to get sponsors or better connections to the bigger manufacturers, for example, Airbus or something like that, by using the electrical development? Ulrich, what do you think? Is there some connection possible from the electric development?
Difficult question. I think the biggest problem we have that we have too less numbers we produce on systems, yeah? Or can produce or can sell, yeah? And so it's then hard to find manufacturers, especially for the batteries or so, and although the manufacturers as Airbus, in my opinion, are less helpful for that. Yeah, we have to look for other manufacturers for automotive and so on to see if there are batteries available we can use for our systems too. Yeah, but it's still tricky to find manufacturers who said big manufacturers will say, okay, for the glider manufacturers, we build all the 200 or 100 systems per year. Yeah, more the question is from them how many hundred you need per day or so. Yeah.
Okay, Luca, do you agree with Ulrich, and do you think there will be some increase battery power, some increase on the engine in general? Do you see there any chances for the future for development?
I think in future we will see more and more gliders with electric propulsion. So if the main difference between battery systems for cars or for aviation in general is that in car you have relatively lots of space available, and so volume is not such a problem, and even not a weight, and acceleration on full power is only a few seconds. But in aviation you don't need just high capacity, but you also need high power. So, and there are additional problems with water cooling systems, which some car manufacturers introduced. So in aviation, it's actually more demanding how to solve these problems in the future, so that also heavier gliders eventually will be built in bigger numbers as electric. So.
Okay, now we got some technical questions in the live stream, and one is really interesting. Lucky Luke is asking, how is it able that the batteries aren't exploding during flight? So I give this question to you both, maybe. Now I'm excited about the answer.
Probably Luca has more experience.
So, how, this question, how it's not exploding. So of course we do everything what is possible that the system is as safe as possible. So anyway, eventually when you gave the system to all kinds of different users, you figure out where are the weak points of the system. And for instance, when development started, you get the first customers are a little bit more technical, so they really take care that they do not abuse the system. But when more general pilots or clubs, they start using. So you must be prepared for more abuse. And sometimes, for instance, now it's like 3 years ago, we had some problems with the batteries, and eventually we practically recall all the batteries. And to my surprise, we figure out that about 5% of the batteries which we inspect, they were mechanically damaged. So, and this was a big concern to me. So we eventually developed a stainless steel box for transportation, because some pilots simply put the batteries in front of the trailer, where is all this equipment for ground handling, and you know, basically treating the batteries like a box of cheese, not like something, a box where is plenty of energy stored inside. So, but now I think the pilots become more aware that they need to take care for the batteries, because this is at the end also for their safety. So.
Für die deutschen Zuschauer die letzten Minuten kurz zusammengefasst. Wir haben festgestellt, dass die Entwicklung im elektrischen Antriebskonzeptbereich vielleicht nicht ganz so schnell weitergehen wird, wie wir es uns vielleicht erhoffen, weil einfach große Hersteller nicht den Markt im Segelflugbereich sehen, sondern dann doch eher im Automobilbereich. Und die Dinge, die im Automobilbereich umgesetzt werden können, einfach nicht ganz zum Segelflug passen. Dazu kommt die Antwort auf die Frage aus dem Livestream, warum denn die Batterien einfach nicht im Flug explodieren, also wie man das sicherstellt. Und Luca hat uns dazu ganz klar gesagt, dass am Anfang da schon Bedenken vorhanden waren, vor allem die ersten Batterien, die als Rückläufer kamen in die Kontrolle, da waren durchaus 5% schon mechanisch beschädigt, was erstmal Bedenken losgelöst hat. Und es hat sich aber herausgestellt, dass schlussendlich eine Grundumerziehung der Piloten notwendig war, denn man kann nun mal die FES-Batterien nicht einfach vorne in den Anhänger stellen, nehmen die Schleppstange und das Flächenrad und das Kuller drumherum schneiden. Das klappt einfach nicht, sondern die müssen in Edelstahlboxen, die jetzt auch zu allen Flugzeugen dazugehören, gepackt werden. Die haben Erschütterungssensoren dran, sodass man auch sofort sieht, ob mechanische Beschädigungen vorhanden sind. Das heißt, mittlerweile, so auch seiner Erfahrung, geht die Zahl der beschädigten Batterien doch schon signifikant zurück. Let's come back to the beginning. The main idea of this discussion was to collect all the ideas for the future, for the electric gliding. So I would like that every one of you gives us one wish for the next E-Glide, which will be sure next year. We don't know where, but it will be then. So one wish or one idea for the next E-Glide. What would you like to take over, to change maybe for the next organizers? Yeah. Matthew.
I feel very unlucky to be going first here. The things I raised before about handicap, swing loading, balancing the electricity across the different gliders, I think things like that can improve participation and bring more people to it. And I think that's ultimately my wish, is that we have more people coming to an event like this, perhaps enough that we can have multiple classes one day. My real dream for electric gliders is that we can have competitions where everyone can self-launch. You can set a task and have everyone launch to 600 meters, start the task off, engine off, no one outlands, no one crashes from their turbo not starting or something like that. I think we can really change the way we fly competitions, kind of like, I mean, we talked a lot about decentralized competitions here, but what about lighter weight centralized competitions that require much less effort from, I mean, you look around here, the enormous group that's assembled to run this competition on our behalf. I hope that with electric gliders in the future, we can drastically reduce what's needed on the ground to support us when we go flying in the air, and ultimately increase the participation in gliding.
That were a lot of wishes. Marcus, you made notice for the next year? Thilo.
Well, my wish is that Großrückerswalde is organizing again such a contest because they're doing just a marvelous job here. We really have to, I think this is a applaud we should give them. I mean, they're really doing a... Yeah, and maybe a second wish is that more people could enjoy this kind of flying, having the same amount of fun as we have currently here.
That's some kind of unfair. Moritz.
Well, I'm not participating, but from like a spectator's kind of view, it would be very interesting to have some live scoring where we also know about battery usage of the glider pilots.
Yeah, that was also my wish, that it's easier to understand for the people who don't participate here. So we have now a scoring system where it on top stands points and below there are minutes. So nobody understands it, and a year ago when I had a look to the first E2GLIDE competition, I couldn't understand it at all. So there was no change till now, so I think it would be a step forward if we can make it clearer and more understandable.
So in general, just a bit easier for everybody outside of the competition.
Yeah, and start with a scoring system. You can't show up with minutes and call them points.
Absolutely. Luca.
From my point of view, I would like to see next year some phase two-seaters on the competition.
That's a pretty interesting point of view. We got one here, the DG1000 Neo from DG. And yeah, it flew every day since it's here, so maybe next year. I'm pretty sure it will take part at the next E2GLIDE. Ulrich, your wishes?
Okay, the pilots are closer than this, but I think I can agree to all the wishes the pilots have, and it's the same that I wish to see more different gliders with different systems in such a competition.
For me, it would be really great if every German or every manufacturer would be able to send an somehow electrical glider to the next competition. That would be really great. I thank you for this discussion. I think we got a lot of points discussed today. The viewers might be now a bit smarter referring to the E2GLIDE, or they might now have more questions than before. I don't really know. I hope that ich danke allen Zuschauern. Es war eine sehr lebhafte Diskussion. Wir haben viele Punkte für die nächsten Jahre mitgenommen. Ich denke, wer auch immer den nächsten Wettbewerb organisiert, ich fände es auch ganz schön hier in Großrückerswalde nebenbei. Das ist von Dresden nicht so weit zum Fahren. Es wäre wirklich cool, wenn wir die Wünsche mit übernehmen, und ich denke, allein wenn wir hier vorne die Manpower sehen, die hier sitzt, und auch die Teilnehmer, mit wie viel Begeisterung die dabei sind, mache ich mir keine Sorgen, dass wir die nächsten Jahre dieses Wettbewerbsformat einschlafen lassen, sondern ich denke, wir alle gemeinsam können es wunderbar entwickeln, und auch im Deutschen Aeroclub, respektive der Bundeskommission Segelflug, sollte angekommen sein, dass hier was ganz, ganz Zukunftsweisendes passiert, sodass wir gemeinsam hier den Grundstein für eine neue Wettbewerbsform gelegt haben. Dankeschön.